So today on the show, is this a show, a web series? Today on the program, we are talking about video games. Have you heard of them? So the man with a plan asked, what kind of video game would I make if I were to make one? I talk a lot about game design in my videos, but I've looked little into trying to develop a game myself because I stand by the belief that video games are the most difficult form of art to make because it's all the difficulty of making a movie and working with all those kinds of people and stuff and having all the different elements and different arts at play within it. And then you throw gameplay on top of that. So obviously, I've always loved video games. I've tried to make video games in the past, but the problem is that they've just never gotten all that far because I didn't really have the concept fully fleshed out before entering it. And I don't think it would come as any surprise to most people that if I were to make a video game, I would probably want to do an RPG. And I like RPGs because they're very tactics based, like stuff like Persona. I really like. I like the types of games where each move you make, you have to like the fun in it is of waiting, looking, observing everything in front of you, and making your next move after considering all the implications of it. I love that kind of stuff, the tactic stuff. I really like chess. I think chess is probably it's pretty inarguably like one of the greatest games ever created because there's just no chance, and that's the kind of thing that's the tough thing about designing a game, especially an RPG, is chance has to happen unless you make very predictable AI for enemies and bosses and stuff, but then it's not really that fun. But what's really, really important to me is that it's a game where people, if they make a mistake, it is clear to them it was their mistake, it wasn't the game being unfair or something. I feel strongly that gameplay has to come first when trying to create a game because I feel like there's a lot of games, especially now, that put the story first, and that's not necessarily an incorrect approach, but I think it's a dangerous one because then I think you're jeopardizing the gameplay by not focusing on that, which is kind of the main drawing point, the center focus of the entirety of the art form. And I feel like you see that even in like the Mother series, particularly the first one, because the gameplay is kind of like the driest element of the whole thing, because there's a lot of life in that game, but the gameplay is just so boring, and then they rushed through it and stuff. But then you see games like well, not an RPG, but like Mario 64, where you can tell all the movement is what was come up with first, and even like Earthbound, Mother 2, where it's clear that the gameplay was thought through much more than previously, and I think that's part of the reason why Earthbound stands so high on the shoulders of Mother 1, is that the gameplay is more fleshed out, feels like a more complete experience in that sense. I ventured into programs like RPG Maker very, very little, and I don't think I'll ever actually end up completing a game at some point. I would have to really come up with a good concept, and there was one I was kicking around for a while, but it would just take like a really long time to figure out the story, and who knows, maybe I will one day and then I'll make it. But I thought of creating some smaller games, but like I more frankly am interested in a position of kind of like almost producing, where it's kind of overseeing and trying to help guide the project rather than being directly in charge of it, which is funny because I like to put the directed by title in all of my videos and stuff. But I think that is kind of a big part of this whole process of knowing your place and knowing your strengths and weaknesses so that you can best employ yourself into that atmosphere to create the best game possible, the best piece of art you can. Because my favorite kinds of games are the ones that have moments where you experience the story, the experience itself as a whole through the gameplay. There's like great moments like in Final Fantasy and 7 and stuff where they do crazy things with the controls, and Earthbound and Earthbound in particular does it very well during its final boss, as many know. But yeah, the thing that's kind of the cornerstone for me is that if I made a game, I would want it to have that pure video gaming feel where you experience what the game's trying to do through the gameplay itself, and that itself tells you the story. And because I think that's a very beautiful and amazing thing when it can happen, and that's why it's seen so infrequently, unfortunately, in games, is because it's such a high art form in that sense that many can't even achieve it, and who knows if even I could. Never say never, but that's my thoughts.